The Holy Gospel according to Luke. On the first day of the week, at early dawn, the women came to the tomb taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and on the third day rise again?" Then they remembered his words. And returning from the tomb, they told all of this to the 11 and all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at all that had happened. The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. He is risen. Hallelujah. In a short while, we'll celebrate Holy Communion. All baptized Christians, regardless of your denominational background or tradition, are welcome to join us at the Lord's table today. Because it's Easter and because of the great numbers, we will distribute communion by intinction. There will be 4 stations, 2 at the front and 2 just a little further over from them. As you come down the aisle in the direction of the usher, go to whichever station is open. Figure that you're at the airport. Whatever desk you see open, that's the one you go to. Don't wait to be asked, don't wait to be pushed, don't wait to be dragged. If you see an open communion station, you head right for it, please. On the 2 extreme wings will be grape juice, and the 2 in the center will be wine. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. So one of my favorite old hymns is Faith of Our Fathers. I can hear Bing Crosby singing it now. Faith of our fathers living still, in spite of dungeon, fire and sword. Oh, how my heart sings high with joy whene'er we hear that glorious word. Faith of our fathers living still, we will be true to thee till death. Except I've been in church since I was a rugrat, just a little ankle biter. And I've got to tell you, most times I've seen a lot of women and far fewer men in church. I apologize to every man here, but you know it's true. So it occurs to me, not for the first time, that that song should be rewritten. That hymn should be Faith of Our Mothers. And have that message reinforced in my head and in my heart this morning by the Gospel account in Luke. Only in John's Gospel is there a male disciple at the foot of the cross. And John only mentions that because he's the disciple at the foot of the cross. If it wasn't him, he might not have mentioned it. In all the other Gospels, the men are conspicuous by their absence, and at the foot of the cross are the women. Now, it's in Luke's Gospel that he takes great pains to name the women. They're not just the women, which is something that happens a lot in Scripture. The women this, the women that, but we don't know their names. But in Luke's Gospel, he names the women who are at the foot of the cross. And wouldn't you know it, it's the very same list of names that we find in Luke's Gospel in chapter 8, when Jesus is still in Galilee, his home turf, his home territory. At that point, he hasn't even set his face to go to Jerusalem, but the women who are with him there are named. And we're told that they are the women who didn't just follow him, but they financed his ministry. They supported it with their own resources. So they followed Jesus and they bankrolled his ministry. And Luke names them. And they're the same women with him in Galilee who are now with him at the cross. Not the tomb yet, at the cross, because the women are named in Luke's Gospel at the cross. And it's the same women. And then those women are the ones named in Luke's Gospel as being at the tomb when Jesus is laid there by Joseph of Arimathea. And now, these pious, observant women, who Luke tells us didn't go to the tomb the day before because it was the Sabbath and they were meant to rest on the Sabbath. So these observant, pious women have waited in accordance with the law a whole day, even though the man that they loved is alone in a tomb. Now they come to the tomb, and those same women, named by Luke, are the ones who are the first witnesses of the resurrection. And they go and tell the men. And the men don't believe them. We translate that in English as an idle tale, but it's also a Greek phrase that means, you know when you have malaria and you're delirious? Same phrase in Greek. Very dismissive of the women. Not just an idle tale, but delirious babbling. Now it could be that they disbelieve the women because men have a tendency to disbelieve women. But it could be that the women don't understand what's going on. They're giving the message that Jesus is risen, but without any understanding of why he is alive or how he is alive. But just in case you think I'm picking on the women as not understanding, you hear in Luke's Gospel that Peter is the one man who goes to the tomb. And he is the one man who sees that Jesus is alive. But he doesn't get it either. Luke's Gospel says, and he went away wondering. I think they translated it in NRSV as amazed, but it's the same word as wondering. So I have this mental picture of Peter wandering off and scratching his head. And you notice he doesn't run off to the city square or the town centre or the synagogue. Peter discovers Jesus is alive and he goes home. He goes home scratching his head. The very next verse, although it's not in the reading for today, but the very next verse, not the very next chapter, the very next verse has the story of the road to Emmaus, where two of the disciples are getting out of town as fast as their little legs can carry them to the relative safety of Emmaus, a town nearby, getting away from Jerusalem while the going's good. And Jesus appears to them, and they don't recognize Jesus. In fact, it's not until he gets some fish and cooks it and breaks the bread, shares a meal with them, that they realize who he is, that it's the resurrected Jesus. But even then, although Luke's Gospel says they're filled with joy, they're also kind of filled with fear and confusion. Even then, they don't get it either. So, if you're a regular churchgoer and you don't fully get the resurrection, that's okay, you're in good company. If you're a Christmas and Easter person, if you're the kind of person that thinks that church only ever has poinsettias and lilies out, and you're feeling just a wee bit guilty about that, first of all, don't. You are very welcome. But if you're sitting there thinking, I bet everyone else around me gets this more than I get it, no, they don't. But that's all right. And I'll get to why it's all right in a minute. The men only understand when Jesus takes pains to explain, and in the breaking of the bread. Although it's not in Luke's Gospel, in John's Gospel, which we read last night in worship here, Mary Magdalene only recognizes Jesus when he speaks her name. There's only the recognition when her name is spoken and when Jesus breaks bread. Let me take the first of those first. The spoken name. I've said this at many a funeral. If you've heard me, I apologize for the repetition. But long time ago, my granddad was very old. If I was to find out today how old he was, I probably wouldn't think it was very old at all. But when you're a kid, your grandparents seem very old. I'm not making eye contact with anyone while I say that. You notice that? I'm keeping my head down. I'm not as dumb as I look. So someone at the party, and we got together with grandparents and cousins at least a couple of times a month, every month. Someone asked my granddad if he was afraid to die. And it must have been a kid, because I can't imagine an adult asking that at a party, no matter how much whiskey had flown. Scotch. And my granddad didn't skip a beat. I mean, he didn't have to say, oh. He was asked, and he had an answer. He said, no, I'm not afraid to die, but I am afraid to be forgotten. I'm afraid that after I've died, my name will never be mentioned at a party again, not at Christmas, not at birthdays or christenings or Easter. There'll be family gatherings and no one will want to mention my name to begin with because they don't want to ruin the party for everyone else. And then after that, you'll all have a good time without me. No, I'm not afraid to die. I am afraid to be forgotten. And there's a reason I tell that story at more funerals than not. Because it gives me a chance to let Bob Blyth live again in a story. And I get to say his name out loud. Because the family have never forgotten him. And never will. But it's the power in being remembered. It's the power in being recognized. It's the power in having your name said out loud. It's the power that comes when that other person can look you in the eye and know who you are. A little like in the movie Avatar. I know you. I see you. I know who you are in the depth of your soul. That thing comes with family, but it comes with the risen Lord too. Mary Magdalene had no idea who that strange man in the garden was. She thought he was the gardener, and it wasn't until he spoke her name, that supreme act of recognition, that way of saying, I know who you are and you matter to me, that she realized it was the risen Lord. And in the depth of our suffering or confusion, in the most profound moments of abandonment, when we think that we are worth nothing and nobody cares and nobody knows and no one will miss us, the risen Lord calls out our name. Not hey you, but our name. The name by which we are known. The name that accompanies our history and our laughter and our tears. And the Lord speaks our name because the Lord knows us. And in that moment, the resurrection becomes more than just an historic event 2,000 years ago, but life breaks into the present. And in the breaking of the bread, the two disciples who were hightailing it out of Jerusalem with their tails between their legs realized that they were in the presence of the risen Lord Jesus. And they knew it because that's what he did with his disciples. They would break bread together and share teaching and stories. Perhaps it's only when we do the Christ stuff that we see the Christ in others. Only when we love each other, only when we serve each other, only when we're there for each other, only when we pour ourselves out for each other, only when we pick each other up out of the dirt of the earth, only when we sit beside each other's hospital beds, only when we visit the Alzheimer's units together, only when we do the stuff of Christ, the ministry and the service and the sharing and the caring and the love of Christ. Maybe it's in the doing of it, as it was in the breaking of the bread, that we see Christ in each other and see Christ in the world. The same Christ who in that still small voice speaks our name out loud. So, should you feel guilty if you know that you're here for some deep, profound reason, but you don't get it all? Should you feel guilty because you only know a fraction of what's going on? No. All that the women at the foot of the cross knew was that the person that they loved with all of their heart and soul and mind was dying on a cross. All the women knew was that that death was an act of supreme love. Greater love had no one than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friend. That it was an act of love, and that those arms spread on the cross were beckoning the whole world in deep and profound grace. All they knew was that the man that they loved with heart and soul and mind, and who had journeyed throughout Galilee and toward Jerusalem, and given him all that they had to give, and I wouldn't be surprised to discover gave more besides, that he was lying in a tomb, and that once their religious duty was done, they had another duty to give to him. And all those women knew was that he was alive, that death no longer had the final word. Death no longer had dominion. That as we live in him and die in him, so shall we live in him to eternal life. And they knew it was filled with grace. They knew all that. That was all they knew, but that was all they needed to know. And if that's all you know, then that's everything. That's everything that matters. More than a library full of theological tomes. More than 1,000 sermons. More than any seminary class or college class you will sit in. Or any theologian that thinks that he or she has dotted every I and crossed every T and said everything there is to say. If you, like they, know that he is risen and that death is thereby destroyed, then you not only know enough, you know